My name is Lori Eschenberg. I work at St. Clair County Metropolitan Planning, and we have 6 partners, and it's a big grant, and it's going to be a lot of work. But our partners are, of course, St. Clair County, and I'm with the Blue Ways of St. Clair. Harry Burkholder is from Land Information Access Association in Traverse City, and they're our consultant, and they were the consultant that also built our Blue Ways website. Blue Water Area Convention Visitors Bureau, and Judy is here. Marcy Fogel and Judy Stewart work there. And Tip of the Thumb Heritage Water Trail, Huron County and Tuscola County. So we have 6 different partners, and some are contributing small amounts of money, some are contributing large amounts of what's called in-kind match, so they're going to be volunteering to help us with. And we did a pilot with Marine City and St. Clair last summer and fall, and it worked out well, and we're just finishing that up. And it's a series of 3 meetings and an assessment of your town. And the two of the meetings are we get together around a map, and we really talk about the Blue Ways, we talk about the Bridge to Bay Trail and all your other recreation assets, and we talk about your community and how it's set up, like your central business district, and we talk about your businesses and how they can be more welcoming to trail users, and we talk about access and what someone that has never been to your city might see when they walk in or when they bike in or when they paddle in. And so we are going to be wanting a steering committee from the city of Port Huron and to come to these meetings. We want people that are interested in recreation. We want city officials, residents, anyone that's interested in kayaking, biking, or hiking. And out of that will come a master plan that Leah in St. Clair County writes that's a blueprint for you to implement this program in steps, because you won't be able to do it all at once, because some of the things may cost a lot of money, as we're finding out with the launch. Providing access and help educating your business owners to just be more welcoming to everybody that might come into their establishment. And then at the end, we're going to have, the St. Clair County will have a committee that will meet once or twice a year from the cities. And the reason Port Huron is doing this is because you're part of Discover the Blue. You've paid your entry fee into the Blue Water Convention Visitors Bureau. So it's Algonac, Clay, St. Clair, Marine City, Port Huron, Port Sanilac, Lexington, Harbor Beach, and Port Austin. And there's a few cities that aren't on there because they decided they're not on the coast and Discover the Blue. So you have been chosen by this grant that we're going to come assess your city. So that's kind of what it is. The whole Discover the Blue coast. What's good is for Port Huron, it's really good for Port Austin. What's good for Algonac is good for St. Clair, because when people are attracted to one of those cities, all the other cities they want to come back and check out. So it behooves us to all work together. Harry Burkholder is going to do the presentation. So he's from Land Information Access Association.
Great, thanks, Lori. As Lori said, my name is Harry Burkholder. I'm a community planner with, on the slide here it says LIAA, otherwise known as LEA, or Land Information Access Association. We'll go by either name. As long as you're calling us. We're a group out of Traverse City. We're a nonprofit group, and the last, I'd say, 6 or 7 years, we've been working on different projects that deal with interjurisdictional cooperation, townships and cities or townships and villages working together on a planning project, and that would range from a master plan zoning ordinance to a corridor plan to recreation plan. That seems to be the low-hanging fruit with recreation plans, and out of that we did a lot of trail planning projects, and then this concept came along called Trail Towns. And now we're working around the state in different communities, just like this one, to do these kind of trail town planning efforts. And the tag on the top of the slide is exactly what Trail Towns is. So using trail systems and any trail system that you might have to leverage place, tourism, economic development. So if you guys are public officials, you've probably heard the word placemaking probably one too many times for the last year. Unfortunately, this is a poster child for placemaking, but it's good for communities to think about, especially if they have the trail assets in their community. See if I can't get this clicker to work. Okay. So what is a trail town? This is the long version, and this is the only slide that I'll read, but it's a destination on a long distance trail, whether it's on a rail trail, towpath, water trail, or hiking trail. Trail users can venture off the trail, enjoy the scenery, the services, and heritage of the nearby community with its own character and charm. But it's also a safe place where both town residents and trail users can walk, find goods and services they need, and easily access both trail and town by foot or vehicle. In such a town, the trail is an integral and important part of the community. That's the long version. The short version, the take-home version, is how do you get people off the trail and into your town? So we found through research and through not only Michigan but other states, they have people going on vacation just to do recreational trail type tourism. And they're stopping at different communities along the way. So the trick is, how do you get those people to stay in your community for 1 or 2 days or even a week as they're doing that type of trail tourism. The Allegheny Trail Alliance, which is the organization at the bottom of the screen, actually came up with this concept. And they're a coalition of 7 different trail organizations that are building what's called the Great Allegheny Passage, which is a 150-mile multi-use trail that connects with the C&O Canal Trail in Maryland. In that sense, this is about a 350-mile trail that connects Washington, D.C. with the city of Pittsburgh. You can kind of see on this map, but all these little dots on the way are little towns. And so they had all these people coming maybe for a weekend or a couple of days, and they're doing kind of section 1 and 2, or maybe they're coming for a week and they're doing section 1 through 4, or they're coming back multiple times this summer doing one section. All these people are kind of coming through their town. If you think about the people who hike the Appalachian Trail, they're stopping in all these little towns away. And they said, as a region or as a community, how can we actually, do we have the goods and services that these trail users need? Do we have the shops that they're looking for? Do we serve them the food that they want? Are they able to stay in our community? Can they camp, or do they need a bed and breakfast? So they started to look at themselves as a community, but also as a region, to see if they're providing those goods and services, and that's where they came up with this concept, this Trail Towns concept. Now, they all worked together and actually created a 501c3 nonprofit, and this nonprofit group specifically works with all those jurisdictions on this Trail Towns concept. And they have a whole how-to manual, how to be a trail town. They're the first ones to do it. We actually took that manual and tried to do it with a Michigan perspective. But they also do a lot of other things that maximize the economic potential of trail-based tourism. That's really the theme. You can see that on the top paragraph. So they do economic impact studies. There's so many communities that have no idea how much money comes in on a trail. So how much is a person willing to spend on a day or a weekend if they're coming via the trail? They do trail counts. When we work around the state, you'd be surprised at how many communities don't know how many people are on their trail on a given weekend or a given season, because they just don't count that. They just don't do the counts. So they do things like that, but they also work with businesses to do some of the things you see on the screen. So they'll do business assistance to get businesses off the ground. They actually do business recruiting to fill the needs of businesses that aren't there for those trail user needs. But they'll do facade improvement programs, bike rack programs, public art. They really serve as both kind of a trail and recreation lens, but also have this community economic downtown development lens. And they're trying to merge those together. So we see different areas around the country trying to pick up on this model. Now, communities around the United States have been doing this for a while. They just haven't called it trail towns. So communities like Portland and Austin and Minneapolis, communities that have pretty robust trail systems, they've been working for a long time on leveraging those trail systems for economic development. But this Trail Towns title is really caught on, let's say, in the last 5 years. The Appalachian Trail Conservancy, as you might think, has a program. The North Country Trail Association, the North Country Trail is a trail that goes from the Adirondacks all the way to North Dakota. The longest stretch of that entire trail goes the entire length of Michigan. They have their own Trail Town program. The state of Kentucky just initiated their Trail Town program. So we see this going on all over the United States. And it's catching on in Michigan. So if you're from a township, you might have seen an article that we wrote last year on trail towns. If you're from the city and you get the Michigan Municipal Review, then you might have seen an article on this. This is from our newsletter, the TARP Trails. I live in Traverse City. The TARP Trails manages all the trails in that community. And their whole fall newsletter was on the economic impact, what trails mean for business in that region. So communities all over the state are trying to realize that they have people coming to their community to go on the trail. How can we get them to make an impact for our economic and community development? In terms of the communities in the state that are taking this Trail Town approach, a lot in northern Michigan, and it's catching on in southern Michigan. So the North Country Trail Association, I mentioned, has their Trail Town program. They have these 5 communities in Michigan, and they're all in northern Michigan, as identified as trail towns. But all they get is a little plaque that's they put on the side of their road. So when you drive into Petoskey, you'll see a sign that says Trail Town. They have no programming with it. There's no really no resources that go with that title. You just get this nice plaque. And so as part of this project, we're trying to bring more to the table for those communities. The Clinton River Watershed Council and the Huron River Watershed Council, they're just now establishing their own trail towns, or what they call water towns program, with all the different communities along the Huron and Clinton River. It's the same kind of concept that we're talking about with the Blue Ways. Obviously, we're in the middle of this project right now, but then individual trail town planning efforts in northern Michigan that we worked on for Mackinac City and Petoskey and so forth. And then I mentioned this manual that you can download off our website that we did for free. It says for northern Michigan, but that's just because that's who helped pay for it, but it's really applicable to anywhere in the state. So we're going to be taking a lot of the concepts of that manual in this process and doing that here in St. Clair County in the thumb. So what is a trail town? Well, it's a friendly place that supports and celebrates and encourages those trail users to visit. And I tell communities this is much about community attitude as it is about anything else. So does your community embrace the fact that you have a trail? And do they embrace the fact that you have people using that trail and staying in your community? So a lot of times we talk to businesses, especially local businesses, about hospitality. So if I go into any restaurant in downtown Fort Huron and I ask the waiter, where's the trailhead for the water trail or for the Beta Bridge Trail, they should be able to tell me where it is. There should be a map on every hotel lobby in the city of where the trail is. So really embracing that culture of having a trail in your community, and you can leverage that. We also want to have the physical and business amenities that support those folks coming to town on trail. So if you, not necessarily having trailside cafes, but just kind of having those informal places. If you've heard of placemaking, you've heard of this idea of the third place, a place where you can kind of just hang out in the downtown. Do you have those areas within your community? A lot of times we see people coming on bike tours and they want to spend 2 hours, they want to have lunch, and they just want to hang out. They don't want to get right back on the bike. Do you have a place in your downtown or your commercial area that supports those types of uses? And do you have the businesses that actually support that? So bed and breakfasts or campgrounds, or even a bike repair shop, a kayak rental, those things that support those needs. We want to have interesting places with accessible and comfortable spaces I've talked about, but interesting is the key place. Just think about going on any vacation, whether you're going by car or bike. You want to go to someplace interesting. So we want to have an active downtown that people actually want to walk through with neat retail and kind of the hospitality aspect. The trail itself and that whole concept really promotes social interaction and, again, that strong sense of place. So it is about placemaking. But this is the key, and this is what Lori mentioned. They're not isolated communities. We found in all these other states, when you have a string of trail towns, not just one, but you have many, that you can really leverage that as a region and become a trail destination as a region. So again, as Lori said, what's good for Algonac is good for Marine City and St. Clair, because you have people going to each one of those towns along the way. So it's really looking at, do you have the resources in each one of those towns to actually support the people that are using that trail? Where can you have a trail town? It can be anywhere. So it can be in the most urban places. So if you haven't been here, this is the downtown Detroit, the DeQuinder Cut, which is a below-grade trail that connects the Detroit River with the Eastern Market, and they're talking about expanding it. This is downtown Grand Rapids, where they have not only a water trail, but also a trail on the river. This is a little town of Wolverine in northern Michigan, a population not more than 100 people, but it goes right through their downtown. Again, they're trying to leverage that access to the trail for their development. And you can add any kind of trail. So if you have a non-motorized, a water trail, a snowmobile trail, equestrian trail, any trail that you have in your community, you can leverage that to get people to come into your downtown. Now, if you have multiple types of trails, all the better, because then you can leverage that all year round instead of just for one season. Some of the basic elements of the trail town strategy, again, start with what's number one here. Getting people off the trail and into your town. That's really the key. So what we found is that a lot of people, when they're doing trail-based tourism, the first stop they might have in your community is the trailhead. That's your first impression. So what do we have in the community that tells people, what do you have at the trailhead that tells people what's in your community? And one way you can do that is with simple wayfinding. So having a wayfinding map at the trailhead that tells people how to get from the trailhead to your downtown and what's in your downtown is key. We always talk about wayfinding because we really don't see this in a lot of communities. This is in downtown Sheboygan. Having a trailhead sign on your wayfinding. If you think your trail is just as important asset as your city hall, your museum, your schools, anything else you might see on a wayfinding, then have it on the wayfinding sign. That eliminates the fact of trying to find that trail. You know, I'm on my cell phone trying to figure out where it is. And then if you can, and you have a name for that trailhead, put the name of the trailhead on it because that's how people know where they're going. That really provides that connection between your town and the trail as people are coming through it. I mentioned we want to educate local businesses on the economic impacts or benefits of those trail users, and that's easier said than done. The state of Michigan is a little bit behind the 8 ball in trying to figure that out for communities, but there's a lot of studies. If you just Google economic impacts of trails, you'll see a lot of things associated with like real estate prices, but really having a figure of how much money that brings to your community really hasn't been done. Michigan State University has some surveys that help you do that, but really it's really talking about just local businesses to find out, you know, do you see trail users coming into your shop? How many people in full spandex come into your shop on a weekend or sit at your restaurant? And then if we educate them on the benefits of those trail users, then we can say, well, what don't we have in this community that might be beneficial to those trail users? So do we have a laundromat for people that are going on these long trips in our community? Is there a place to actually get, you know, their clothes cleaned, that type of thing? So we can recruit that, and that really supports this trail-friendly character of the town. So again, it's about identity and character. This is in Sutton's Bay. If you've been in the Traverse City region, Traverse City and Sutton's Bay separated by about 14 miles. They have the trail that connects those two communities, but half of it was paved and half of it wasn't. 2 summers ago, they paved the second half, so now it's a continually paved trail. And the amount of people that visit Sutton's Bay via the trail out by Traverse City on a Saturday or Sunday from about June to October is through the roof. To the point where Sutton's Bay now has a bike rental shop. Sutton's Bay now is a small community, and they started to incorporate kind of this biking theme within a lot of their window displays to again to make that connection between the people that are visiting those communities via bike. And so they'll do things like they'll actually mail, if you want to shop in Sutton's Bay, they'll be sure to actually mail something that you want to buy that you can't take away on your bike. Making that connection is key. Some of the groups trying to figure out what the economic benefit is or some of the characteristics of those people. This is from the Department of Natural Resources when they're talking about bike tours. Now there's not one for kayak tours, which would be great, especially for this project. It's probably just kind of the same idea. And the first one is the shoestring cyclists, which tend to be younger folks, and they're riding between 75 to 100 miles a day, and they're looking to do it on the cheap, no more than $30, and $25 is probably spent on beer and something to eat. So they're looking to have a good time of doing that. So maybe all their needs are is camping and maybe a shower and then access to something to drink probably. And then we have the economy cyclists, which tend to be spending probably a little bit more, maybe about $50 a day. They're not riding as far, and they're looking for a little bit more of the creature comforts when they stop. So they're looking for maybe a bed and breakfast and looking for a nice restaurant. They're still looking to do it on the cheap, but they're looking for a little bit more of those creature comforts. Then we have, which I think is Michigan's sweet spot, especially in northern Michigan, is the comfort cyclists, which tend to be folks that are either close to retirement or are retired. They're highly educated, they have discretionary income, their bike or kayak costs $1,500 to $2,000 probably, so they're not afraid to spend money, and they're doing that in those towns. They're spending over $100, and they're looking for the full experience, and perhaps they're staying in your community for 2 or 3 days. And they're only coming by bike, so whatever they can carry on their fanny pack, whatever they can carry on their bike, that's what they have to do in their community. Do you have the amenities to support that? If you have a white tablecloth, this is not this picture of that, if you have a white tablecloth restaurant, are you going to turn them away if everyone comes in spandex and they're all sweaty, or are you going to put them out where no one wants to see them? So we want to make sure that we support those kind of folks for all these different levels. So think about the types of people that are coming in your community. I always show this picture. This is a couple from New Zealand. This is Helsa and Hans from New Zealand, and they were on the bike route 20. This is her map. The bike route 20 goes from just north of Vancouver and goes all the way to Halifax. And it comes to the United States, and they tell you when you cross into Canada, cross at Marine City because it's the best place to cross. And so they were riding in as part of their tour. Lori and I just happened to be down there, and they were asking us, well, where can we stay? I don't see any hotels around. It's not on my little map. There's no sign that tells me for all these bike tourists that come in where's the place to stay. So we were trying to help them find a place to stay. So here's some of your target audience. Now this is kind of the extreme example, but you could have a couple from Alpena, a couple from Grand Rapids that are doing the same type of thing with kayaks. Are we providing that information to them when they come into your town? In terms of the economic impacts we see from other places, and you're probably familiar with this, but it's an organization or an approach that's assisted over 1,200 different communities across the United States. You can kind of see the dots here in Michigan. This is probably an old photo or an old image, but a lot of communities are working on that. And they have what's called their 4-point approach. And so the idea is, can we take that 4-point approach and have this kind of lens of trails and recreation on top of it? So we have the organizing, which is your first point, is getting everyone, the community on board about having a trail towns, which is something you're doing as part of this exercise. Promotion, which goes to, again, obviously promoting the fact that you have a trail town, so having that image out there and available. So that goes from special events and marketing pieces all the way to kind of word of mouth. And then we have this design component, which is not only getting the trail in shape, but also getting the town in shape. So talking about leveraging your best assets, whether historic buildings or traditional downtown layout, things you already have in downtown Fort Erin, we want to make those even better and then continue to leverage those. So we want downtowns that are walkable and look like this. People are not looking for commercial strip mall things when they go on vacation. They're looking for downtowns like this. And they have these kind of amenities. If you've not seen this book came out last year. It's called Urban Retail. It's by a consultant named Robert Gibbs, who's actually from Michigan. who's got kind of the one-on-one for downtowns on how to do downtown development. And the fact that you have Main Street Forward, you're going to see a lot of the same things in that book. But like things like attractive window displays, nice signage, sidewalks, again, all the things you already have going on for yourself in downtown Port Huron. And then economic restructuring is the thing about recruiting those businesses and making sure that that connection is made. Those are your 4 points, and we want to make sure that that's kind of the lens that we see this through. We also want to really understand and define the corridor. It's amazing how many communities I go into, and they have no idea where their portion of the trail ends and the next portion begins. So who's actually in charge of, once it goes past this road, is that the township, or is the city still in charge? Who actually runs the trail? How long is it all the way? So do you know how many miles it is to the next community along this water trail? Can you actually tell that to people? Who manages it? Is something wrong with the trail? A tree falls on the trail? Do you know who to call? Do you have that information readily accessible? Or do you have someone who's in charge of knowing that? We call this the kind of the catalyst. Do we have someone who really knows that is important? And then we want to know what kind of capacity we have at the local level to actually help us do this. So the fact that you have a Main Street, and I think you have a DDA, you have groups like yourselves that are interested, that can really kind of band together to take on this approach is important. And then working with your constituents in your community to help do this program. So working with your historical societies to do things that they're doing, the recreation department, civic groups, health organizations are huge. The connection between recreation and health has never been at the forefront like it has now. So making sure they're on board. I talked about getting that message out locally, so working with your local newspaper or other facilities or outlets to get the word out about we are a trail town, here's what we're doing. And then 5 and 6 are always the hardest and take the most time, but it's finding the resources to do your trail town planning. There's lots of grants and there's a lot of programs out there, but what we found is it really comes from the community itself. It comes from local businesses, it comes from local officials making decisions to allocate money towards some of those amenities. And then again, it doesn't happen overnight, it does take time. Those are the key things to understand. So that's kind of the concept in a nutshell. And then we have what we call our design components, which really speak to that transition between the trail and your downtown. I talked about understanding what goes on in your trail, and that relates not only to the people on your trail, but when they're using it. So do I have a trail that actually has maybe potential conflicts between people on bikes and horses? And do I know if I have a snowmobile trail in the wintertime, when's the typical time that snowmobiles start going on your trail? Can you actually plan for those types of recreation activities on your trail? Do you actually know who's using it? Speaks to, again, understanding your trail users. Understanding where your trail is associated with your downtown. We have 3 different types that we like to talk about. One is internal, which you have here in downtown Port Huron. Here's your Black River internal downtown water trail. This is the one in Marquette. Adjacent, which is about a half mile or so from your downtown, or removed, which is anywhere from 2 miles from your downtown. It doesn't really matter how far away your trailhead is from your downtown. Obviously, if you have one that goes right through your downtown, that's great. But we want to think about, well, what amenities along the way, again, from trailhead to downtown, do we have to make that accessible for trail users? We want to understand things like grade, or we want to understand things like current, what kind of the potential hazards of going in the water. Just make them known at the trailhead so no one's surprised or shocked when they get on the trail as to what to expect. Then we have what we call these key connecting elements, which are all part of that transition again from trailhead to downtown. The first one is your trailhead, and it's the bottom bullet point, which is, I think, the most important. It's the point at which the trail user may first come in contact with the community and the point at which the trail user may decide whether or not to enter your town. So again, this is the kind of the first impression for a lot of folks coming to your community. So if I'm paddling from Algonac and I'm coming north and I go into Port Huron, and I've never been to Port Huron before, my first impression is going to be the trailhead. And if it's not well lit, there's trash everywhere, the facilities are all dinged up, they don't look very nice. Do I really want to stay in that spot, or do I want to keep going on? So really making that your first impression is key. So we want to make sure we have information about the community at the trailhead. And then all these amenities that you see here, we want to have at least some form of some of those whenever we can. Now, not every trailhead is going to be able to accommodate all of these amenities, but if we can use some of these, that's going to be great. And then if we think about those trail users going to use that in different times of the month, let's make sure that we have those amenities. So that goes into thinking of things like your access sites. So if I have a dock or a floating dock that I put in the spring, do I really want to take out Labor Day? Because now we have these kind of falls that go into November and December. Do I have a group of paddlers on a given weekend in October, November that actually need that? then maybe you don't want to take that out on Labor Day. So thinking about who's using your trail at all times of the year is important. So here's where the photos start showing up. So this is in Traverse City. Example of a trailhead, not a very big trailhead, very small, but it's well lit. It's clean, nicely paved. They have a little bench here that you can sit down and put on your rollerblades if you need to. They have a welcome sign. Just the simple act of having something that says welcome or hello actually means something to people. So you're actually welcoming people to the trail. It's kind of hard to see, but this is a push broom right here. And the sign says, if you see debris on this road, go ahead and pick up the broom and brush it off for us. Help us take care of this trail. Be a part of maintaining this trail. Putting some onus on the trail users to do it. All this stuff costs money. And so at the kiosks, they never miss an opportunity to ask people to help pay for it. And that's perfectly fine. This is that kind of connection between the business community. So here's this fence right here. You see it right here? This is that fence. They knew that, they found from trail surveys that one of the things that people most want when they get off the trail is something cold to drink. Because either they're out of their water or their camelback's not warm. They just don't want anything like that. So they had no electricity, but they looked across the fence. This is a veterinarian's office. They said, do you mind if you put a Pepsi machine and hook it up and have it facing the trail? It doesn't do anything for the veterinarian's office probably. Maybe they get 1 or 2 more people a year in it. But it makes that connection. Now you can get something cold when you get off of that trail. So again, that connection between the business community, even though it probably doesn't serve that business very well, and the trail is pretty good. This is in Avard, Michigan, near the Pierre Marquette rail trail. They try to make the trailhead as part of their Chamber of Commerce, but they have a whole kind of historical pictorial kiosk near their trailhead. They have interesting signs about the different programs that's going on in their community to preserve the trail associated with conservation, like a rain garden. It's little signs if you're training for a 5K or a 10K to tell you how far you're going. This is in downtown Detroit. How many people have been on the DeQuinder Cut? Anyone been on that? It's gorgeous. But here's this wide, the trail itself is beautiful. It's wide concourse, nice landscaping. Even the site furniture has got these little reeds in it, just gorgeous. But you can see what it's sitting next to. Not the most inviting area in that part of Detroit. And if you're not from Detroit and you've heard every horror story, whether you believe it or not, and I'm coming with my family of 3 and I want to see that trail, and I come down this road, this is where the trail is now, this is before it was built, where am I going to park? Well, I really want to get out, and this is what it looked like at Street View at the time. Here's where the trail went now. Am I going to park in this kind of sketchy parking lot that's got a big fence and walk down here? Again, not the most inviting trailhead out there. And so they actually had people not actually using the trail from this perspective, and they're actually getting on it at different places. Again, making that connection safe. Now, the DNR actually purchased this big warehouse and is about to tear it down and make it kind of one of their signature urban parks in the state of Michigan. But again, thinking about that aspect. This picture is in Grand Rapids. This is off of one of their trails that connects the suburbs of Grand Rapids. But again, thinking about your trail users and making sure you have those amenities. When we talk about water trails, the National Park Service actually has some standards that they've established for put-ins, and I won't go through all of these, but thinking about those perspectives. If you've been to St. Clair, I told a lot of folks I think St. Clair has done an excellent job of highlighting their access to water. And they start with these signs. So this is boat launch here. You can't really see it. This says boat launch. There's another sign back here, and there's one on the road. So I've never been to St. Clair before, and I'm like, where do I put in my boat? There's no mistaking exactly where I do it. So they made that evidently clear. Now they tied it to their marina, which is great. So now I can go to the restroom and actually take a shower if I wanted to. Here's your pop machine. We have that. We have handicap accessible parking. Kind of hard to see, but this is really kind of an interesting artistic bike rack. Jimmy Buffett Margaritaville Adirondack chairs. I've never seen that in a municipal park in the state of Michigan. Something unique. Something you remember when you go back to Alpena and you go, remember that park? We saw those great chairs? You're going to think of St. Clair when you do that. We have this big welcome sign. If you've never been to St. Clair, you show up on a kayak. This tells you what's going on. I can rent a kayak. If I've driven there, I can rent a kayak. I have my ADA accessible launch. Well, this is one that I think I've never seen in Michigan. If you've been to the River Crab, this is the River Crab here. This is a direct line of the River Crab, and it's kind of like the presidential hotline. They painted the phone red. I pick that up. It gets me to the front desk of the River Crab. They'll come pick me up in their courtesy van, take me to the River Crab, get something to eat, and then they'll take me back to the kayak launch. Here's an example of Rochester on the Clinton River, where they improved kind of the access point to the Clinton River. They actually had this is an Eagle Scout project where they built a kayak rack so I can get out of my kayak and I can walk 4 blocks to downtown Rochester. I talked about, especially for water trails, ADA accessible launches. This is really important. And it depends on where you're in the community, as what size you might have. And St. Clair County has really been pushing ADA accessible launches for the last several years, so I would say kudos to St. Clair County for doing that. And what we found for most people, that getting in and out of the kayak is the hardest part for anybody, whether you're able-bodied or not. Bathrooms are important, because most people always want to use the bathroom to get off the trail, and we want to make sure that they're available just about all year round. Having signage at your trailhead is important, both from a thank you, in terms of having the people who actually pay for it. If you have trail rules that you want to get identified along your trail, we want to have that. If there's kind of something dangerous or something that we want to notice people on, let's make sure we have that on the trail. Here's a couple of examples. In terms of what signs should look like, there's really no standard. One that we like is from Frederick County, which is outside of Washington, D.C. This is their county sign standard, and it has kind of a marketing but also informational component to it. So at the trailhead, if we can start to highlight some of the cultural aspects of our community within the signage or through art, let's do that, because that starts to get to, again, the brand of who we are as a community. Having art is great if you can do it, especially if you have, as art is celebrated in your community. And then you have your downtown. And your downtown needs to be able to support folks that are coming in by bike or just by kayak. So thinking about kind of the things we talked about earlier, is it clean, safe, is it well lit? But do you have those amenities? Do you have bike racks, restaurants with outdoor seating, ATM machines on the outside, Wi-Fi, public restrooms? So this is the actual trail access in Flat Rock. Here's your trailhead with nice parking, wide areas for accessibility. It's got a little sign, that's kind of my portal on the way out of here. Here's my pathway, nice and wide and clean. They really don't have a gateway moment. There's not really an aha moment, but you are downtown. I did mention public amenities, so we want to, again, look at our zoning ordinance to make sure that we actually allow for outdoor cafes on sidewalks. Maybe we're looking at off-premise signs. Anytime, again, we can make the connection between the art community, infrastructure, and our culture, all the better. This is in Alpena, where they have the shipwreck sanctuary just off of the mouth of the river coming out of Alpena. And so this is their trail, the NOAA headquarters, and they have a shipwreck museum there to try to make that connection between that trail. Signs are important, and we have different kinds of signs. So we have signs that talk about navigation, how to get around. Like this one, this is in Sanford, Michigan. It tells you what's ahead in the next town. If I wanted to get something to eat, go to the bathroom, it tells me that. So wayfinding is great for people in cars. That's a kind of given. Now they've made a connection with their businesses. It tells you where to rent bikes. That happens right beyond their bike route. But this is a sign we don't see very often. This is a sign on the trail. So again, if I'm coming to Milford on the trail, and I'm like, where's downtown? I gotta get to downtown. I got something to eat. I got my three kids are screaming at me. Now I know exactly where it is. So having a sign on the trail itself that tells you where your downtown business district is key. So this is in the little town of Toppinabee. Kind of hard to see, but this is Burt Lake in the background. There's a trail, the North Central State Trail, which goes from Gaylord to Mackinac City. An old rail trail is right across the street from this market. Toppinabee, population not more than 150 people. This market is just about the only thing they got going for them. And they thought they were going to get all this business from snowmobilers because it's open to snowmobilers. And they found that actually business from the summertime was about 10 times as much. So what did they do? Well, they put a bike rack. They built a bike rack. They have a sign that says, "Welcome to Bicyclists," inviting people in. They made this pump free. So they're not one with the bike and kids is trying to find a quarter to put in. No, we're going to make it real simple for you. We're going to sell it for free. We also do pre-made sandwiches, things like that. Again, making that connection between the trail and that business. From asking business owners, what do you see in terms of trail users using your business? Doing that through your signage, but also the Blue Ways. Probably everyone has seen this site. This is one of the better sites in Michigan that Lori's put together. Again, promoting those aspects. Having events that are associated with the trail, but also associated with your retail is important. So this is in Kalamazoo. They actually take senior citizens out twice a year on golf carts to show them what they could be doing if they were not in a golf cart on the Calahaven Trail. All the things that I talked about are going to be doing for this process. We're doing a master plan, a trail towns plan for Port Huron. We're going to look at all these things. We're actually going to do a walking assessment from your access site to your downtown, and we're going to look at what we call these 10 essential components. Some of these you're already going to have. But we're going to be looking at all of these, and these are just some of that process. Lori mentioned we're going to get out the maps, and we're going to look at those connections, and we're going to do that evaluation. That's all part of this process.
And we have 16 different water trails in the Blue Ways, and One of them, our most popular trail, which goes right past here, is called the Island Loop Route. And it was the most popular one according to the kayakers. So I applied last January for National Water Trail status just on a whim. And it took 11 months, and I had to meet 7 best management practices with a lot of essays and pictures, and it was pretty exhausting. And it became a national water trail in November, which was awesome. And there was only 11 in the whole nation. And now we're the very first national water trail in the state of Michigan. In June, we want to have a meeting with you, with people of Port Huron. We want to get the steering committee together, and we're going to have maps, and we're going to talk about the nitty-gritty of what Harry just demonstrated. And then we will have another meeting and reassess it again, and then we will have this master plan, so that's the whole process.
But if you're talking about students, I think the one way you could do that is going back to these kind of surveys on the ground.
Right.
That they're a great source for that, because that just takes people hours.
They
You
are,
sit on the
yeah.
trail for every day for 2 weeks in the summertime and ask people, where are you from, how much money are you spending? Those are great resources for that.
Exactly. And I just thought, you know, I mean, we have that right here.
Right.
That's a big deal.
It's a great idea. Blue Water Social Club.
Yes, I don't know if, I know Lori attended last year, but I had a fun idea to try to get people out of the waterways, and it works. And people showed up, and it's amazing. And this year we're expecting at least 200 people out on the water. And all we do is the island loop, and we come back around, we have a big barbecue and enjoy the day together. It really brings the kayaking community together. So
It is
we're
September
excited.
7th.
September 7th this year, yeah.
Well, thank you for coming, and we will put your name on the list, and we will contact you about the June meeting where we're gonna like get into the nitty-gritty.